Speaker, but if you wish to yield to the author, you can.
Uh, Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move to place Bill 52 EC as substituted of the Committee on Finance and Taxation Economic Development. I move to accept it as substituted.
On the motion to accept for purposes of discussion without objection, so ordered.
Again, I further move to place Bill 52 EC as substituted by the committee on the third reading, and I would like to defer to the author of the bill, Senior Senator Pinko,
To discuss the motion.
to discuss it.
Speaker Pinko, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the motion is already to place it in third reading, right?
I think it was already made.
Yes. Okay, I move that, well, Bill number 52 as substituted by the Committee on Finance and Taxation, Commerce, and Economic Development. Since it's already been moved to place it in third reading, the reason for this, Mr. Speaker, that even, I do have like a bus shelter next to my house, and I've seen bus shelter all over the place, and man, like every morning or on a Sunday when I do a lot of cleaning, you get to find a lot of cigarette butts all over the place. And of course, you find can Budweiser, light beer, or Bud Light, name it, Heineken. There's a collection of cans of alcoholic beverages that were consumed during the evening part and probably during the day too. And parents have come to me requesting that some type of legislation should address this, because it's gotten to a point right now that even if there's some children, school children, in the bus shelter, people still sort of slide their cigarettes, and of course they use that place too sometimes during any type of fiesta to as a shelter for them to sit down and drink. But the problem also is, that they drink and they smoke, but yet they don't even take the time out, to Mr. Speaker, to clean the place up. And so this is not, I have been approached by many mayors and many parents, throughout the island, to ask me to address a bill that will disallow beverages, alcoholic beverages, and smoking on the bus shelters throughout our island. So Bill number 52 actually addressed that, Mr. Speaker. So the chairman of the bill, what he did is that he added on several things, and so this has become sort of a substitute version that is in front of us. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, and I'm asking my colleague to support this good bill. And
Thank you, Speaker. Senator Lujan, and then Senator Wampet, and then Senator Calvo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in full support of this bill, and as the author had said, I think there's not one of us in this room that would have one time or another pass by a bus shelter, and we see people smoking, and at times, actually just the other day, I saw a couple men drinking in a bus stop. I'd like to ask this question, though, Mr. Speaker, yourself, or maybe the author would yield to the question where it says in the underline, where it says, including bus stops, bus shelters, or any facilities provided for students waiting for bus transportation to and from school. Are we outlawing this basically just for the time they're being transported to and from school, or is it all time?
Do you yield to the question?
Yes, that's the question.
No, I'm asking the Speaker if he yields to the question.
You want me to repeat it?
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, I'm asking is because on the underline section here it says, including bus stops, bus shelters, or any facility provided.
The way it is written here, yes.
Okay, it's just for the time that they're picked up to go to school and dropped off for just that period of time. No?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay. No, because I'm just reading that it might be read that it might be only for that period of time.
No, it's not, because if you read the
so
first sentence, it shows unless authorized by a
I mean,
licensed
unless
teacher.
I'm not reading it wrong, I'm reading that it could mean just that. waiting for bus transportation to and from school. So if they're not waiting, it's school's out. It might not be illegal. So that's why I'm saying if if that's what we for it to be continuously outlawed from to a bus facility, so there's no ambiguity in it. We just again just period after students rather than put waiting for bus transportation to and from school, because it might be read that only
Yeah.
going to school and coming back from school, it'll be
I think that if you read, the whole chapter, it says, unless authorized by a licensee issued for the premises and sold by the licensee, a person shall not consume any alcohol beverages on any premise where alcoholic beverages are sold, not except as prescribed by the board by regulation, and any premises open or used by the public, including bus shelter, bus stop,
Okay.
or any facilities provided for students waiting for
Yeah.
bus
okay.
transportation.
Well, again, if we make the intent known in this hall, and they want to go back if it's challenged that it's that time, then they can know that the intent of it is actually for the whole time that the bus shelter is there and erected. So that's it, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Wampat?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, actually support, the intent of the bill. It's unfortunate, of course. I know that the teeth of the bill has actually been removed, and the reason why I say that is because we're going to forbid something by law or mandate something by law saying that alcoholic beverages and smoking, of course, should not take place in the areas primarily where, in this particular case, we're talking about children who are at the bus stops or the bus shelters for both alcohol and and tobacco products. But as another if you just look at it today anyway, you see that people are consuming and leaving their empty bottles or cans or cigarette butts all over the bus stop, and these are normally and they're primarily far greater after the school hours. So I hope that through our discussion here is that the intent would solidify that it is for all hours when we're talking about bus shelters, because then that's where the children will come to the very next day. So if we're going to say during school hours only, the violators may come there, or actually will come there. They actually use the bus shelters, believe it or not, basically as a barbecue site to loiter. Because when I was a principal at Dededo Middle School, the bus shelter, which is just in the corner of my school, we would find fillet tuna fish and, of course, the charcoal on the side, cases of beers, and and our children naturally frequent those bus stops, and we see those, so we can't very well say that they should be only during the school hours, because most of them take place after. The issue that I had mentioned earlier that I'm really concerned about is that we're making it a violation. However, we're not authorizing basically anybody, whether it's going to be the police, or if it's going to be public health, or whether it's going to be public works, who maintains these bus shelters normally on an annual basis, or they should be more frequent, that they have no grounds to cite anyone should they find anyone at the bus shelters. And as much as this bill can go so far and do exactly what it is that we don't want for our children to be exposed to alcohol and cigarette smoking, it doesn't do anything. And I'm the second co-sponsor, and I really signed on because I like the original bill where we actually had designated a department, an agency who will be responsible to cite individuals who are violating the laws, and I really like to put it back, and I'm wondering whether, Mr. Speaker, we could have a short recess just to talk about this and see, because I just hate the idea of mandating something, then we can't do anything to enforce it? I guess.
Sorry. Would you have a problem if...
It came out of his committee, so yes, I'd like to give
Yeah.
him the opportunity maybe to...
Okay, and if after Senator Calvo speaks, you feel the need for recess, we'll take one. Senator Calvo, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Of course, I rise in support of this particular piece of legislation. It seems that our bus stops have become quasi-social centers over these past several years, and where folks are using it not only to keep out of the rain, but obviously to consume vast quantities of alcohol or smoke cigarettes. In fact, some of these folks are also using them as a residence for habitation. I do want to make note that if you look at the original bill, there is no citation or penalties. As a matter of fact, the committee added on in their substitute bill a very clear process, because there are separate citations of law, and of course Section 2 it deals with Article 4, Chapter 3, Title 11, and Section 3 deals with 90105, Chapter 90, Title 10, Guam Code. If you'll note, in Section 5 and 6, the committee has added on the process of setting up a citation based on those departments that have responsibilities. So again, on Section 5, which was added on the substitute bill, we allow, and I'll recite Section 5A, alcohol consumption not allowed, citation process to be developed, and this is to accomplish the purposes of Section 2 of this Act. The Department of Revenue and Taxation shall develop a citation format and procedures, payment and collection procedures, and identification and purposes deposit in conformance with the administrative adjudication law. And then, of course, B gives a depository of the funds. Section 6, which again is a different citation of law as in the original bill, but again, there is a different department, and that is why we have Section 6A, which was to accomplish the purposes of Section 3 of this Act. The Department of Public Health and Social Services Division of Environmental Health shall develop a citation format and procedures, payment and collection procedures, and identification of purposes deposits in conformance with the AAA process. And again, of course, B is in the deposit of the funds. So in actuality, the original legislation that was introduced, we saw that we needed to put language furtherance to the discussions or to the comments made by the minority leader. But again, that is why the reason for the substitute bill, and that is why the language in that substitute bill that would give certain responsibilities for the formations of these citation procedures, one to Rev and Tax, and then of course one to Department of Public Health. So what my concern is, if we are to go back to the original bill as introduced, in reality that would be contradictory to some of the concerns that were brought up by the minority leader. So again, I'm asking for your support. If there is further language that the minority leader may have that will give her the necessary teeth, then I'm all open to it, and I'm looking towards her, her guidance in what language. But I don't think we should go back to the original bill. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Would you still like to take the recess? Okay, we'll take a 1-minute recess. Well, you're not in favor of the Shimizu? Oh, you had the floor? Oh, okay. Sorry. Thought you gave up the floor, but... Okay, Senator Calvo, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, I really respect our minority senator, Mr. Speaker. That is one great lady, and I defer to her. She's tiny but terrible. Mr. Speaker, I have 2 minutes amendments that have been distributed to the body. And again, in light of some of the discussions that were and comments between senators and some of their concerns. And with that, I'd like to propose these amendments. The first amendment, again, has been passed out, and it has floor amendment changes to Bill number 52, and it has Eddie Calvo / Antonio Arampinco. And this first amendment would be, and I'll quote, or I'll read it. to add a new sentence at the end of Section 2 and Section 3 to read as follows. And I can open quotations. All monies collected from the citations to be issued under this subsection shall be deposited in the Police Services Fund. And this is, again, based on some of the discussions I've had, some of my colleagues and some of their concerns. So this would ensure that the citations would go to the Police Services Fund. And that's the First Amendment. And
Can I ask a question? When is money money, and when does it become monies?
you know,
I've always been curious about that.
I don't know, Mr. Speaker.
What is the condition that
no
turns
idea,
money
Mr.
plural into
I've
money
always wondered
super
money
plural?
and monies. Why is it plural or singular?
Old English, huh?
And I'm at lost with words, Mr. Speaker. I do not have an answer.
I've
My
just never
apologies.
understood the distinction between money and monies. But okay, on this amendment, is it without objection? Nobody has an objection. Amendment carries.
And
Next
you're going to
amendment.
beat me in 2010. No, that's what the statement made by Senator Pangilinan. The next amendment, Mr. Speaker, is to delete sections 5, 6, and 7 on Bill number 52, but then to add a new section 5 to Bill 52 to read, and again, I'll state this new section 5 will say, alcohol consumption not allowed, a citation process to be developed, and then this would, to accomplish the purposes of this act, the Guam Police Department shall develop a citation format and procedures, payment and collection procedures, and identification and purposes of deposits in conformance with the administrative adjudication law. And then there were some concerns about, again, which entity would be responsible for the development of the citation process. And again, in the discussions with my colleagues, it was felt that they should be put in under the hands and the responsibility of the Guam Police Department. So that is my second amendment.
On that motion, without objection, amendment carries. Senator Shimizu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to offer a floor amendment. Like Senator Ompinko, who was approached by families, parents, regarding the situation or the state of the bus stops being used for all other activities in addition. I would like to just offer to add a new section. And this new section, Mr. Speaker, let me read it. Within 60 days of the effective date of this act, the Director of Public Works shall take an inventory of existing locations where school buses pick up and discharge children, as well as the existing location and condition of concrete bus shelter. The Director of Public Works shall then prepare a plan to construct bus shelters if there are none at some stop location, and to rehabilitate bus stop shelters which have deteriorated. The Director of Public Works shall then transmit these plans, this inventory, together with an estimated needed appropriation to the Governor and Speaker of the Legislature. Mr. Speaker, as we experienced, it's the rainy season, the opening of the school, and as I drive around the island, I do see makeshift bus shelters that are done by families. But really, Mr. Speaker, I think we need to be able to have a stronger grip on the bus stop situation and see what we can do to be able to take care of the safety of our children, as well as protecting them from the elements such as we have here, Mr. Speaker. So I would hope that my colleagues here will support this floor amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Pangilinan, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the amendment. However, I just wanted to I think, enhance the amendment a little bit more based upon my thoughts on what the intention is. When we say within 60 days, that means that they could start the inventory on the 60th day, and then could take months to complete the inventory. And I think the intention here is that we complete the inventory within 60 days. So maybe the would have been more clearer to say, upon enactment shall begin of this act, they shall take an inventory to be completed within 60 days of the beginning of the inventory, so that it doesn't stretch out for longer than 60 days. And then maybe we might want to add, in cooperation with the mayors of the respective villages, because they have a better and more easy access, I think, to finding these bus stops and so forth, because they work with the mayors, and the mayors know where students really congregate to be picked up, even without the existence of a bus stop. So I'm saying that I think that's really the intention here, and I think to add the mayors would speed up the process of the inventory, since they know their villages and they know where the children are and congregate for the purpose of securing the bus ride. So
How can we do this with a minimum of rewrite?
Sure. I really
he's
appreciate
already starting. I think the author of the amendment is starting to write it, and I think he probably has completed it. So, I defer to him. And if he doesn't want to do it, then I'll work on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Pangilinan. Mr. Speaker, those are well taken clarification. Maybe what I can do, if we just go, I've been writing down what Senator Pangilinan was saying, and I just try to make it simple. And within 60 days of the effective date of this act, the Director of Public Works shall complete an inventory, and then after inventory, in collaboration with the mayors of Guam. So complete an inventory in collaboration with the mayor of Guam of existing location. Mayors and vice mayors.
Does the clerk have that? Take away take and substitute complete. After the word locations, a clause with the cooperation of the mayors of Guam.
Yeah, and I'd like to also say in collaboration of the mayors and vice mayors, if that's appropriate. So it'll be just complete an inventory in collaborations with the mayors and vice mayors of Guam of existing locations.
On the motion, is there any objection? Without objection, the motion carries.
Thank you very much, Mr.
On the
Speaker.
main motion, any objection? Senator Wampa, you've already spoken on the main motion, so.
Mr. Speaker, if I'm still in order on this issue.
Proceed.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, just a suggestion here to remove the word condition of concrete. Was pointed out to me that there are a variety of so just the conditions of all bus stops.
Okay.
Delete
On the
concrete.
third line of the amendment, remove the word concrete. Any objection? Amendment carries.
Thank you.
On the main motion? Without objection, the main motion carries. We are now on Bill. No, we're on Bill 43. Who's the author of this bill? Oh, Senator Calvo, you can go ahead and do the honors.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was Bill 387. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to move to accept Bill 43 as substituted by the committee.
On that motion, without objection? Objection on the substitution? On the substitution, without objection, the substitute version is accepted for discussion. Senator Calvo?
And further, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to also move to place Bill number 43 as substituted by committee on the third reading.
Do you wish to discuss that?
Yes, I do.
Place it in third? Yeah, okay, you're next. To substitute? Sure, go ahead. I'll accept the point of order.
Record that the packet does not meet this section of the law, and so the motion has to be a notwithstanding motion,
Oh.
and I don't know if you can notwithstanding the law. Everybody,
No, I understand.
if anybody wants a copy, I mean.
I got it. I understand. We'll take a 1 minute recess.
Mm-hmm. 87 passed into law, but now substituted by Bill 43. But because of the complications, I would like to request that Bill number 43, as substituted by the committee, be passed on file
Until such time.
until such time as, of course, we address the issue with legal counsel of the legislature to see what can be done to remedy this unfortunate situation of a family that has not been compensated for a land taking for the past 20 years.
Okay. On the motion to pass on file without objection, so ordered. We are now on Bill 24. I'm sorry, Resolution 24. Senator Spalding, you're recognized.
I move that Resolution 24 be placed in the third reading file. Is that an appropriate?
That's perfectly fine. I just
Motion.
want to know if you wish to speak on the motion.
And I do wish to speak on the motion.
You're recognized, Senator Spalding.
Very briefly, I think pretty much everybody here is well aware that during World War II, the Philippines was basically a territory of the United States, much like Guam is today. And the people of the Philippines were considered nationals. In their fight against the occupying forces, the Japanese in this instance, basically the United States conscripted the military forces of the Philippines into the U.S. Army. And as a result, basically became U.S. American war veterans. However, in 1946, all rights to veterans from that war were rescinded, and throughout time, basically, they have been given back piecemeal some of the benefits that they supposedly were to enjoy as part of the U.S. military. In particular, they were given back their burial rights at veteran cemeteries, as well as rights to access to U.S. veteran hospitals. Basically, earlier this year in January, the House and the Congress introduced their own versions of some kind of it's basically called the Philippine Veterans Equity Act of 2007, basically restoring all the benefits promised as as soldiers under the U.S. Army, or U.S. military. And this is basically a resolution showing support for that resolution. And I urge my colleagues to support this resolution. Thank you.
On the motion, Senator Pangilinan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to rise in support of the good senator's resolution to recognize the efforts, of course, and the contributions of the Filipino-American veterans of World War II, and to support the passage of the Equity Act of 2007. Mr. Speaker, this is a promise that the United States made to these loyal men and women who served under the United States military during World War II. There is no doubt, and the record is clear, that the veterans, or these individuals who came to the service of the United States government in fighting World War II, were made promises with regards to their ability to access everything from pensions to medical care to access to living in the United States because of their commitment and service and dedication to helping the United States fight and preserve democracy during World War II. And we on Guam know exactly the position these veterans are in, given our own experiences with the United States as an occupied people during World War II. We not only know the horrors of the war and were inflicted the brutalities of the war upon our own people, these individuals also made the same experiencing, except they were carrying arms on behalf of the United States government. And I think that as we continue to support our allies and people in similar situations, like the Chamorros were during World War II, then we, of course, lift ourselves up and make better cases for our own petitions to the United States in order for the United States to make the promises good on those promises that they made to the people of Guam. And there are many things, I believe, that the United States have made promises to the people of Guam and did not provide either the resources or the processes to allow us to fully take advantage of everything that the United States government had said they were going to do for the people of Guam that they have not been able to do and did not allow us to do. And so in our own effort in support of this Equity Act for this Filipino-American veterans, we gain allies in our own efforts for our fight for things like war reparations, which is another promise of the unfunded or a broken promise, or promise unfulfilled, I would say, rather than broken promise. Promise unfulfilled by the United States government with regards to the treatment of the people of Guam for the atrocities in World War II. And so this effort to include Guam's voice and this legislative body's voice in sounding the support for these Filipino-American veterans, I believe is absolutely appropriate, needed, and is additive to the efforts that is going on in Congress. And I hope that Congress will continue to listen to our petition on behalf of these veterans, and that when it's time for us to bring our petition to Congress, which we have already in the Loyalty Recognition Act, that these individuals who suffered the same brutalities of war, with them it was as armed combatants of the United States government, that they will come to our ally, to our position, and help us, support us in those efforts. I think it is absolutely necessary that we do this, not only because we want them as our allies, but it is morally right that as people of the Pacific Theater in the war, that we continue to support these efforts to ensure that all of the chapters of the war that affect the peoples of the Pacific be closed and be fulfilled. And I think this is a step towards that effort, and I want to commend the good senator, and I want to lend my support to this effort. Sidus Mase, Mr. Speaker.
Is anybody else? Speaker Pinko, you're recognized.
Yeah, well, just briefly, Mr. Speaker, I stand in support of Resolution 24. It's this is being actually now addressed in Congress, and this resolution needs to be passed so that our voice here in the Guam legislature, and also the voice of many other Filipino veterans should be heard as far as our side of the world is concerned. While we know from experience, Mr. Speaker, how many times our voice are not really heard over in D.C., but I think the time has come where we should make a louder noise. And maybe take out the Dandan Pandoreta and make it really sound really loud, so that the people over there realize the fact that we're not just the tip of the spear, but also we are really in we're the direct area that secure the United States of America from being invaded or being attacked. And so that's why that while we're here and our brothers over in the Philippines, there's about 5 to 20, maybe 15,000 of them right now that are in need to actually receive these benefits. So, Mr. Speaker, I stand in support of the of resolution number 24, and that is to recognize the heroic effort of the Filipino-American veterans of World War II, and to support the passage also of the Filipino Veterans Equity Act of 2007. And we're asking the 110 Congress to actually deliberate on this and give what is due really to the people, the Filipino veterans. Like the retiring speaker mentioned, I hope that this does not fall on deaf ears like what our problems right now, the war reparation, that it will pass the two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. But I think it'd be a great help to make clear the intent of this legislature, and then the intent of this legislature, of course, is to support resolution number 24 wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Senator Guthrie's, you're recognized.
University of the Republic of the Philippines. That's a foreign student from Guam. What I remember most about the experience was that there was one day a year that the Filipino people celebrated as Philippine-American Friendship Day. And this day was a holiday which referenced the many trials and tribulations the Filipino people experienced along with their American counterparts, not just during the Commonwealth period of the Philippines, but during the war years. In addition to that day, in commemoration of the invasion of the Philippines by Japanese imperial forces and the liberation of the Philippines by General MacArthur and General Romulo, on that day, throughout the country, throughout all the media, television particularly, film footage of the occupation of the Philippines by the Japanese and the fighting that was done by the loyal Filipino soldiers that served in the U.S. forces during that period are shown on national television. Having seen that and saw how this commemorative day and the understanding that the Filipino people have of the sacrifices that their own people had because of World War II, I find it most just that this resolution be supported by all of us here in this body. On our own island, our many links to the Philippines, past and present, continue. But our government, our national government, our federal government, has not done all it is supposed to do to recognize the Filipino veterans who served in the U.S. forces during World War II to fight the Japanese imperial forces. Our government has not done right by the Filipino people. To this very day, just as it has not done right to the people of Guam on the issue of war reparations. Mr. Speaker, whenever there is an equity among people, for whatever reason, we must stand up and speak for those people. And this resolution does that. It expresses the sentiments of the people of Guam in support of the Filipino veterans, just as this legislature has stood up to express the sentiments of the people of Guam for the Guam reparation issue for our Chamorro people. I am pleased to support this resolution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the main motion, is there any objection? Without objection, the main motion carries. Senator Ishizaki, on the matter of Bill number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to move that we include Bill 84 as a substitute bill to be accepted for purpose of discussion.
I'm sorry. We're on bill number 3.
Oh, number 3. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, it caught me off guard. Mr. Speaker, I move that we put bill number 3 in the third reading file.
Do you wish to discuss the motion?
Sure. Let's do that. Mr. Speaker, this bill is to ensure and prohibit lame duck incumbents from hiring new unclassified employees and prohibit salary increases to unclassified employees following a loss of election. And as we witnessed in the past, after an election, some abuses have taken place, and it greatly affected the future operating ability of certain departments, such as the Attorney General's office, as an example. In the past, certain mayor's office have been affected by indiscriminate spending to the point that it affected the ability of that entity to function for the rest of the fiscal year, and thereby it endangers the problems and prohibited the department to continue to effectively operate without support from this body to provide supplemental funds. And as we know, in the current condition of our government, we are really not able to draw down from a bank of funds for indiscriminate spending. So I hope my colleagues will support this bill, and I trust that it is a good bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Pangilinan, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I certainly agree with the bill, but just had one question: that why are we limiting it? Why don't we just say nobody can get a pay raise after an election, whether you win, whether you lose, whether you decide not to run? This leaves the ability for the governor, for example, to raise the salaries of all of his employees if he wins. Is that the purpose of winning, maybe? You know? So I don't understand and I guess the author's not here to yield to the question, and the committee report did not address that matter, I guess, or at least I don't see it. I just don't understand, or have an idea of why they decided not to just exclude it. I mean, you kind of contract your employees, especially the unclassified employees. You kind of know exactly what you do, and maybe the incentive here is that, we tell our employees, if I win, I give you an election, a raise, but if I lose, you don't have a job. And so maybe we're trying to allow incumbents to build incentives to winning by telling their employees they can get a pay raise after they win, because it doesn't, from my reading of this, it doesn't prohibit that. Yet that's still money out of the government coffers. That's still a outside of the ordinary course of personnel planning and management that you implement. So that's my one hesitation, I guess, with the bill, is that it only it only prohibits for losers and those that don't decide not to run. But winners are just as susceptible to rewarding employees and raising salaries as those that don't win and those that don't run. So if we're going to do this, I think we really should cover just the fact that in an election year, after an election, just no salary increases for unclassified employees, period. No matter what office you have and so forth. And then you can, once you come into your new term, you can plan based upon the budget you have, your personnel, plan and implement that, because you really shouldn't be giving it out of turn. And if you do, then unless there are anniversaries after the election, then really it'll be out of turn. But as an employer of an unclassified, you're not limited to those. So my inclination here is just say no increases. And for after an election, no matter who or what and whatever status you enjoy. So, I hesitate to make the amendment because the author is not here, and there's no co-author on the bill as I see it, to kind of give their perspective on it. So, I want to make that amendment if so, but I would need a little bit of time to write it, Mr. Speaker.
Let's take a couple minutes recess.
Minor problems in the citation of the sections. So we're going to request that we pass on file for the time being.
On the motion to pass on file, is there any objections? Without objection, so ordered.
I think on the bill, it needs to have page 2 and 4. It's missing right now.
Yeah. Okay, we're now on Bill 84. Senator Ishizaki, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to move that substitute bill 84 be accepted for purposes of discussion.
On that motion, without objection, so ordered. Senator Ishizaki.
I'd like to also move to place substitute bill 84 to be placed in the third reading file.
You're recognized to speak on the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, Bill 84 is an attempt to make our government a little more efficient. It's a proposal to consolidate and reorganize Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority and the Guam Housing Corporation into one entity called the Guam Housing Authority. The intent is to really better serve our people, and between the two entities, we're going to be able to better help our tenants who have trouble getting public housing. So we're dealing with people that have housing difficulties, from renters to eventually helping them to become property owners. And so the two functions, there's two distinctly different functions of Guam Housing Corporation and GURA is going to be consolidated into one entity. The reorganization is consistent with what we need to do to find ways to make government more efficient and, in the long run, reduce the cost of government. The long-term solutions, of course, will help in cost savings. Short-term, there'll be very minimal cost savings. The one-stop approach to serving our people from renters to ownership is probably the best benefit, and improved efficiency, housing, all of the services under one umbrella to be co-located in one location is the ultimate goal to better serve our people. For the benefit of my colleagues, I hope you support it. We have been a collaboration between Guam Housing Corporation and GURA on multiple meetings between the boards, the management, and the employees of both entities. Both entities are in support of this initiative. During public hearings, there were no objections by any parties to oppose reorganization. No federal grants will be in jeopardy. Federal funds and local funds will be distinctly held separate, as the proposal is to really hold Guam Housing Corporation as a wholly owned subsidiary within the Guam Housing Authority. Their assets and liabilities will not be commingled or mixed. There are pending litigation that Guam Housing has, and that liability, if it becomes a liability, will not impact on federal grants, especially HUD grants that run GURA. The two boards currently comprise of approximately 5 members for each board will be left alone to create a larger than normal board, and through attrition, the boards will eventually arrive at a composition of 7. Some people may ask, why bother? Why mess up with a good thing? Both entities are serving our people well. I think reorganization is going to allow them to better serve our people. So I hope my colleagues will support it, and I thank you.
Senator Guthers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, colleagues. I stand in support of this bill. I think it shows a lot of courage to begin the process of modernizing this government. It is only natural when you introduce legislation like this for some peripheral segments to be very uncomfortable with change. But I think in this case, through the leadership of Senator Ishizaki, he met in roundtable with these two separate entities and met with them more than once, gathered information, shared it with his committee members, and I am a member of his committee, and used a lot of insight to continually revise the bill. Many of the senators here committed themselves to change in the way our government operates for the purpose of promoting the delivery of better services to our people. And that really is the objective of this bill, to enhance services to the people of Guam and hopefully to reduce redundant costs in the process. As we move forward in our community over the next few years, housing is going to be a very critical issue for the people of Guam. Affordable housing. And it's important that we have an integrated perspective in government on what is needed so that the programs that are developed locally and with the support of federal assistance are programs that will be accessible to all the people of Guam. The most critical need is going to be affordable housing. But in addition to that, rental housing will also be a critical need, particularly with the impending arrival of literally thousands of individuals who some way or somehow are going to be connected to the military buildup. These are not all going to be military personnel. These are going to be people who will be supporting the military in this buildup, who will be working in construction projects, who will be working in professional capacities, who will be working for contractors, and who might even be employees of the federal government. All of this is going to create a lot of pressure on our community, which will make it much more difficult for our current residents to find and be able to live in affordable housing. I think this bill is going to be one answer to develop an integrated single policy towards promoting and developing the kind of housing that is needed by our people on Guam. So I totally support this new initiative, and I commend its primary author. Thank you very much.
Speaker Pinko, you're recognized.
I do stand in support of the bill. I just wanted to get clarification from the author, and I think it's important that you do this publicly. One of the big concerns that was brought up by some people about the activities that's happening right now at Guam Housing Urban Renewal Authority, where it is federally 100% funded, right? While on the other hand, Guam Housing Corporation is just locally funded. And so how do you, let's say, the two entities now work separately to make sure that the mandates of the federal mandate of accounting will be taken care of? And this is, I know that this question was brought up, and that there are a lot of concern that they may probably make some of the activities and the main thing about the reorganization, of course, is to cut down the costs. But the guidelines set forth by Guam Housing Urban Renewal Authority is that they have, since they are all 100% federally funded, that they cannot be commingled in any activities that Guam Housing have. So maybe you can explain that. But I am for this bill.
I'll yield, Mr. Speaker. It's a very good question, Mr. Speaker, and Tony and Pico, and I appreciate your support. The language of this bill recognizes the need to separate their assets and their liabilities, and to protect Guam Housing Corporation, because it's a significantly smaller entity And I committed myself to making sure that they are protected and not absorbed into the big, larger GURA component. And certainly the need to protect their assets and not commingle funds, a lot of the funds which are federally funded HUD grant money. To protect that, the language of the bill specifically addresses that with the statement that the Guam Housing Corporation entity will be a wholly owned subsidiary, and that their bookkeeping, their records are going to be distinctly separated into two different systems. There are redundancies in the way they operate their missions, and the redundant parts can be addressed by improving the management and oversight of how the two entities will function, and they can certainly help each other. And by co-locating when a new building when it's built, it'll really improve the services to our people and protect those assets and not compromise federal grants.
Senator Palacios, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of Bill 84 during the public hearing. It was brought out by the two agency heads that they both support of course, the reorganization, and that one thing pointed out clearly was that there will be no danger in federal funding problem, because they will continue to be maintained separate as it is right now with respect to accounting and recording and those things. And so that is clear. And again, there have been favorable support by people who have been involved in the original reorganization, and I am convinced that this is a pretty adequately thought out process. And again, the important consideration for myself in this case is that the federal funding would not in any way be compromised with respect to questioning of application and administration, and that's been said. And for that, Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of Bill 84.
Senator Wampat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm normally not against any consolidation of agencies, especially if they are replicating or duplicating some of the services. My concern, however, is that, because I remember it, that in the last term, the former chairperson had asked basically some questions, and these are some of the questions that I would also like to have answered. Although I've heard that on the short term there will be minimal cost, basically in terms of savings, but the long term is what I'm looking at. So if the author then is willing to be able to at least outline some of those things in terms of what initially would be the savings versus what the long-term savings would be.
Do you yield, Senator Shiozaki?
I yield. Thank you for the question. You know, that was another set of great questions. The Guam Housing Corporation has really significantly cut down all their overhead, and so they are a lean and mean machine. And so at this point, it'd be very difficult to envision a very large savings in consolidation. Plus, we have certain public laws that prohibit furlough and layoffs of public employees as a result of reorganization. So the only areas of possible cost savings in the immediate future upon passage of this bill into law would be a reduction on the upper levels in the leadership of the two entities. And that's something that will hopefully be achieved as we move forward with this proposal. In the long term, I believe we need to do this because I'm not sure that we're going to realize cost savings now, because there's obviously a need to greater numbers of public housing. And with, you know, we were basing our estimates, I believe, and I have to recognize the hard effort of Kaleo Moylan when he was Lieutenant Governor as one of the energy behind this, that we were not taking into consideration a significant growth in Guam as a result of the military and all the components associated with the military. So if that factor were not part of this equation, we could really realize significant cost savings downrange in following through in a long-term solution of consolidation of these two entities. But in light of the significantly anticipated growth of Guam and a large estimate of the number of additional housing units that Guam is going to need, I don't see a cost savings, but if we do not move towards consolidations, we're going to see greater costs in the future. I hope that answers the questions to my colleague.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, what I just don't want to see, of course, and reviewing the bill, and then having heard, of course, the explanation, when we do a consolidation, normally it's to eliminate duplications, which is normally a good thing. The other would be to provide some seamless type of a process in which both of these two agencies are actually reaching or servicing the same clientele. And then there's the elimination of any redundancies. What I'm concerned is that if the cost savings are so small at the very beginning, and then we end up having basically like these two entities come together and become one large then Department of Housing. I just don't want it to be like GPSS now, where it's just too large, and then Centro's becoming too large as well. And I don't want this to be a reason for them to come again, say, although we've consolidated now, we realize further down the line that now we're going to need some upper management so that to be able to provide some continuity and communication between the two for maybe, I don't know, one director and one deputy. Are the two individuals basically are heading these departments going to continue to be a part of the agencies? Now, I heard earlier in the discussion that one is federal and one is local. And throughout the bill, of course, it says that, the statement was made that the assets would be separate, their liabilities would be separate. However, throughout the bill, basically it says that there will be the transfer of funds and assets. So all balances held in the revolving funds will be, transferred into the Department of Housing. All real property will be transferred into the Department of Housing. All supplies, equipment, and material assets will be also transferred. And this is set for both. So I have another question then, basically. If this is the case where all their assets are then, and funds are being transferred, what basically is being separate here other than the liabilities? And how is this going to work?
It seems to me that the questions are pretty broad. Why don't we take a recess?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I want to commend the author of the bill for working diligently to put this together, and actually his office and my office had sat down and actually in a couple meetings to review this bill. At this point, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to say, because like I said, there's been a lot of work that the good senator has worked on in putting together this bill. My concern is that we're not quite there yet in regards to this, and let me just say, as we speak, we're going to be confirming one member to the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority. As chairman of not just GURA but Guam Housing Corporation, we're going to be transitioning. We're going to be confirming in hopefully next week or so. One of the things that concerns me, and I know that the good author of the bill had said that there's going to be a transition period in regards to, and through attrition, the members of both boards will slowly transition in, and through attrition, as their terms expire, I guess people will be appointed to these positions to head as one super board. In anticipation for that, Mr. Speaker, and actually this goes back to the 27th Guam legislature, even the 28th, when similar measures have come up in regards to reorganizations. Most especially when it came to my committee starting the 28th and also now the 29th in regards to commissioners and board of directors to be appointed to those specific agencies. One of the first things I would ask the appointees will be the proposed mergers of these agencies. And I bring it as a concern because now as they come in one super board, for example, GURA members are not quite versed in portfolios of Guam Housing Corporation, nor are Guam Housing Corporation board members quite versed in public housing. It's a great concern. Again, if that was the case, the person that now that's going to face a confirmation from this body should be well versed into the merger, so we can start from this one person that we're going to be confirming, that at least she has both entities, has full knowledge of not just, or a great deal of knowledge, not only on the entity that she was appointed on, but has a firm grip on the, say, Guam Housing Corporation. In this case, that's not how it stands. This person is versed and getting a little more versed in GURA, but has, because of where she's at, not quite versed in the portfolios of Guam Housing Corporation. The question was asked earlier, I think it was good senior senator, in regards to the 100% federally funded agencies in GURA, and then again, Guam Housing Corporation's proceeds come portfolio, just like other financial institutions. There are no, to answer if author may, there are no cost savings in regards to, at least not right on the onset, in regards to the merger. Both agencies, neither of the agencies come to this body on an annual basis for funding for their particular agencies. You can recall back the challenges that Guam Housing Corporation had prior to Mr. Joe Guevara taking the helm over there. The agency had turned around. It's now in the black. They have a very good portfolio. Their audit came back, and I mean they got the thumbs up. One of the few agencies that got the thumbs up. GURA, similar audit came back with that. They had a couple challenges, but as we speak, the challenges are being addressed, not just on the local side, but on the federal side. And I had an opportunity again to meet with the HUD folks in Hawaii a few months back. The question was asked: how do the federal agencies feel about the mergers? Well, like all federal agencies, they don't mingle with local laws and statute and things like that. Their concern is, don't commingle our funds. Whatever it is that you do, don't commingle our funds. They won't come in and tell the local government that you're doing this wrong or you should be doing this. That's what our local government is supposed to be doing for our local entities, our local agencies. But they do express, again, the commingling and all that of funds. or their sources of revenue. Another area of concern is that we have in the government of Guam, Mr. Speaker, housing stock out there. We have housing under the Department of Public Works, and we also have housing under the Department of Administration. Now, some of these houses now are going again. Are GURA are bringing from Guam Housing. From Public Works and Department of Administration. But that transition is not quite there. It's not there yet. It's not there yet. It's very little maintenance is happening to these homes because we know that DOA and Public Works do not have the funding to maintain their homes. So they're trying to, and it may require statute to be able to get these homes to the appropriate agency, be it Guam Housing or GURA. Now GURA is in the running for a lot of these because they have the federal funding to be able to get these homes and put it on their public housing grants and things like that to be able to get the money. Now, it's not quite that way with Guam Housing Corporation. Guam Housing Corporation has also this big lawsuit that they're dealing with in the Lada Estates situation. So, again, the complete inventory under this one super housing entity, we have some strays out there that need to come into the fold. My major concern is this: when I did ask the federal agency in Hawaii regarding the merger, and again, they continue to say, don't commingle funds, don't do this, don't do that. But this is the one thing they did say to me. They said, Senator, a few years back, we merged Federal Housing Authority and the state-funded financing assistant agency, kind of like Guam Housing and GURA. They merged, they came together. Hawaii separated them again in 2005. And the effective date of the separation, when they came together as one, the effective date was July 1st, 2006. So I have not gotten the answers to the questions regarding why were they merged in the first place and why was it separated? What caused the separation? The same concerns, again, brought the mergers together as what we're discussing now, and probably even more, because they have a bigger inventory and a wider population to deal with, and more money, of course. But the merger back then, I don't know if it's for size and portfolio and public assistance and things of that nature, where they came about. I don't have an answer to that in regards to the separation again of those two entities. So that is my concern in regards to that. They came together as one super housing agency, but separated 2005 and effective July 1st, 2006, they separated again. I think we're almost there in regards to the refining of the bill. But these, again, are just some of my concerns, because I'm greatly concerned in regards to, again, as we continue, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I've got one more that we didn't put in the agenda for a public hearing. I think I have, if I'm not mistaken, one more person to come into Guam Housing Corporation. So if that's the case, it has to be included now that, you know, we have to have people that are coming. The transition needs to start as soon as this, you know, if this bill passes, that the appointments from the governor to this legislature, that these appointees have a great deal of knowledge of not just public housing, but portfolios in general into lending institutions. because we don't see that now. And again, this is the one question that I always pose in the confirmations of those prospective boards to those prospective agencies. So I got to commend the author in working diligently and putting together with the two agencies the manpower and the hours that went into this bill. I just have some concerns in regards to that, but I think we're in the right road. We just need to be able to cross a little more T's and dot more I's and that, and we should have a good finished product, and hopefully that we don't turn out to be what Hawaii went through again a few years back and separated out this last year. That's my concern, and I hope to get that answer. And that the answer cannot come from the author. It has to come from the prospective agencies in Hawaii that did that. So again, with that, I just again commend the author and the hard work and the committee they put together to get this bill out. I just again I've got some concerns in regards to again, as we continue to appoint and continue to vote on the appointments and their expertise to these boards, and then again the other housing entities that we have out there that are not necessarily included, and we don't know where they're going to go, whether it be Guam Housing or Gura, that are now in the inventory of DOA and Public Works. So with that, again, Mr. Speaker, thank you for your time. Thank you.
On the main motion, Senator Barnes, then Senator Respicia.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to speak briefly on this bill number 84, which will more or less reorganize and consolidate two agencies, two government entities, into what we would call the Department of Housing. And Mr. Speaker, I really extend my kudos to the author of the legislation for working closely with his committee members and some folks in the business community in reference to pushing this effort forward in, I guess, incorporating the two divisions. And I, at the time, at the public hearing, had questioned or had brought to the table questions in reference to would there be any actual cost savings if the entities were incorporated together? If so, would it be working through attrition? Would it be working to cuts? Who would take the helm, whether it be the Guam Housing Corporation or would be the Urban and Renewal Development Authority? And in that take, I was also concerned about the federal guidelines. One, of course, being having a substantial funding from the federal statutes, and one being an autonomous agency that receives its own funding and I guess has its own facilities where they rent out to the community. And another concern I had was the enabling statute in Chapter 4 and 5 of 2012 that weren't mentioned and addressed into this. And with that on hand, there was supposed to be a commitment or a letter that would be addressed back to the committee saying that the federal government, who works closely with this entity, would have something in writing for us. And at that time I was just concerned. I wanted to make sure that if a federal statute was going to come in and integrate into this organization, that that we literally dotted our I's and crossed our T's. And it was really important for me because, first of all, I wanted to make sure that when a reorganization is done, that there really is a cost savings here, and that we really were going to downsize, and that we really were going to make that substantial savings for the government. And as we see here, again, one of these agencies is an autonomous, and another one is federally funded, if not 100% federally funded. Mr. Speaker, I am in support of reorganization. I am in support of downsizing. I am in support, but I want to make sure that when reorganization and restructuring and reconsolidations and downsizing of government is in place, then I want to make sure that the commitment and the mission mandates of the programs that are, or the agencies that are created for, that they provide the basic needed services for our community. And I wanted to also make sure that this integration would be in the best interest of our community. And to date, Mr. Speaker, I still have some questions regarding receiving a status on how the federal government feels about this integration. I also have a concern about the true commingling of funds if it were to integrate. I do know that the financial department of the Guam Housing assured that measures would be in place so that the funds will not be commingled. I also had a concern in reference to the membership of the body, the makeup of the board. And if I can remember correctly, Mr. Speaker, in the 27th Guam legislature, if I can remember clearly, there was a law that was passed by the 27th Guam legislature that prevents any government of Guam employee from serving on any boards and commissions due to a conflict of interest. So, though, Mr. Speaker, I am in support of downsizing and reorganization, I just want to make sure that our community, our residents at large, those who want to provide that quality of life, and as far as providing housing and assisted housing, that they are given the best shake. And I'd like to continue to work closely as a part of the committee to make sure that the federal issues and the statutes that were in question, that we get a clear definition of where they stand at this point. And in writing would be perfectly in line of wanting to make sure that this reorganization goes through. So with that concern, I'd like to thank again the author for his diligence and hard work, and the folks also in the private community who assisted, but also want to address to this body that there are still some questions that need to be answered, and I just want to be very careful before I make that final commitment in the best interest of our community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Spicio.
Thank you very much, Ms. Speaker, for giving me a brief opportunity to speak on Bill number 84. If I can get this podium to stand up correctly. Mr. Speaker, I believe the committee report sends a message to every single member of the legislature. There's 10 members who voted, 6 of which voted to pass, and 4 of which, including myself, voted just to report out. We've heard from the chairman on housing, which also sent us a message to proceed with caution. And one of the co-sponsors of this bill, the gentlelady from Manilao, voted to report this legislation out as well. I'm not necessarily particularly in support or opposed to this bill, only that I wish to reserve my vote until such time these issues can be clarified. Of interest to me is whether or not the federal government will see this as supplanting. As we all know, the federal government comes down very hard when we use their federal funds to supplement a local mandate, and I think that's one of the concerns that we're waiting to be addressed. And so I think that on the surface, while it may appear that this bill is a step in the right direction toward reorganizing this government, I want to send a message to the oversight chairman, the sponsor of this bill, that maybe perhaps rather than doing this piecemeal, we could do this holistically and address the need to reorganize this government in that kind of a fashion. I believe that the bill before us, Bill number 84, is simply a name change, as it only changes the name of this organization, but yet does nothing to fully integrate both entities. And so having said all these things, Mr. Speaker, as well as the concerns raised by both the retiring speaker and other members of not only this legislature but this committee, I don't think I will lend my support to this bill unless these issues will be addressed before we're ready to vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Shimizu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to raise certain questions regarding the bill itself, and hopefully the answers can be help me guide me in terms of making the right kind of vote, so that it doesn't come back and hunt me in terms of the reason for the reorganization. Number one, and if the good sponsor would yield, this is a merger of two distinct agencies. One is Guam Housing, and the other one is Guam Housing and Urban Renewal. If we merge these two into the Department of Housing, how would that impact the issues of urban renewal? Urban renewal is just not only building homes, but it's really building a whole community. We've had urban renewal up in Jonia. We've had urban renewal up in Sinahanya. How would that impact or minimize the issue of urban renewal? And is urban renewal, a dead issue in the territory by also removing that the name Guam Housing and Urban Renewal? That's one question, and if the good author would yield on that.
Thank you for the question. I'm not the expert in housing. I think the oversight chair for housing might want to answer that. But on the question of Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority, the last two projects were actually the result of Typhoon Karen, from my recollection, and it was to rebuild Guam after a very, very serious disaster. But I think the basic mission of GURA really is more into getting public housing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And that's why I'm trying to see, by removing the name Urban Renewal, would we tacitly also remove that very well good community? Like, I live down south. I don't have sewers. I don't have sidewalks. I don't have some of the kinds of amenities that you would have in an urban renewal. And by killing Guam Housing and Urban Renewal, the urban renewal side of that function, we may be doing ourselves a disservice by sending messages to, I guess, those who have the purse strings that deals with urban renewal, that we may not, we minimize that importance. Urban renewal is a building of communities, Mr. Speaker, and then, like you say, well, what's in a name? It is very important. And would the good chair yield and say maybe the name of Guam Housing takes care of Guam Housing, and the urban renewal part, bringing these two together, re-emphasizes the housing aspect where Mr. Govargo, because that's more of a financing lending institution, and the urban renewal side, of which is a lot of it is federal programs. And I would caution that maybe might want to reconsider instead of just saying Department of Housing, just to build houses, to make loans for houses, and so forth, that we do not lose sight of the prominence of urban renewal.
I hate to interrupt, but
I'm done with that part.
the speaker is the third person in a row that has referred to this as the Department of Housing, which was the name in the original bill. This committee report has 3 versions of the bill in it. So I'm just asking everybody to make sure that they're looking at the right version of the bill.
That being said, maybe the good chair would, the author would tell me that I'm reading from the wrong page of the
Quite
music
possible.
sheet because I went through all of it. I need no sincerity.
And I noticed you're not the only one, Senator Shimizu, who
Oh,
keeps
thank you.
referring to the Department of Housing. That was the name in the first version of the bill. In the third version of the bill, it has an entirely different name.
And that name may be
It's in the third version of the bill.
author? Yes, but what is the name, if you can just go ahead and let me know right now while I'm flipping through. Okay, as substituted by the committee. You're absolutely right. And the name, relative to reorganization of Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority and the Guam Housing into a single entity known as the Guam Housing Authority. Okay, so it does, again, the new name still minimizes the urban side, but I want to caution that that we don't lose sight and we don't undermine the importance of urban renewal. And now I've got to go back to my spreadsheet and all my notes. If the good author would yield on section 94-105, the board, on line 10, Mr. Speaker, it states here, not more than 2 members shall be at any time a salaried official or employee of the government of Guam. Has that been deleted on the new version?
Let's take a 1-minute recess just so the chair and the speaker can get together, make sure they're talking about the same bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That will be very helpful. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I raised that because sometimes things are not as clear on issues. I think if I understood correctly, there were earlier legislation, Mr. Speaker, that prohibited the government of Guam employees to be on this boards and commission, and that's why I was looking at it within that context. And I wanted to ask the good senator, what was the intent in that area, and because I know, basically what I read and why I raised the question. And if it will make it clear, and if the good author would not object, you can just delete on line 18, page 3, not more than 2 commissioners shall be at any time a salaried employee or government of Guam, and just delete that completely. Because really the intent here is to have a board of commissioners to be the policy makers in terms of running the new department of that is being created of the merger. So that would be my suggestion to this section, so that it will not have some question raised like I raised in that area. So if there's no objection, I want to move to make that amendment, that we delete not more than 2 commissioners shall be at any time be a salaried official or employee of the government of Guam. This is on line 3, page 3. Line 18 to, okay, I can do that, but 1 minute. So, but he wants it in writing now. Come on, no objection. Huh? Oh no, it's okay. Oh, I know how to speak English, notwithstanding the fact that my good colleague thinks I don't. At manit ginambi na so. Ay, those shall be at any time a salary. Huh?
How come? I just turned off the main switch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we had recess to work on the amendment. I passed out the amendment to Bill 84, and this is on page 3, line 18, 19, and 20, which is to delete the not more than ... to Guam. So make
On
that
the amendment, is there any objection? Without objection, the amendment carries. Your second amendment, please.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd like again to offer an amendment to make this better. I just need to try to make sure that I'm on the right music sheet, because even the good author, and I'm on the substitute by the committee. Let me see, because it's a thick... Basically, it's on page 4. We'll delete, quote, as well as, on line 11, as well as each employee of the authority.
On the amendment? Without objection, the amendment carries. Anything else?
Thank you. Now, Mr. Speaker, on the a point of information, I think it has to do with the issues of jurisdiction. I know this was assigned to the Committee on Reorganization, but this is also a housing a bill. And I would be interested in, if I can yield a little bit of my time to the chairman of housing, simply because the question that I had in my mind, and I mentioned it lightly, that Guam Housing is a financial institution. It makes loans out. And when I was saying that, it came to mind that another agency might be equally, if not more of a paramount merging, would be the Guam Economic and Development Authority, because they have portfolios of loans being issued out versus that of the Guam, GURA, Guam Housing and Urban Renewal. So if I can, if the good chair of the Housing Committee would yield to my question as to...
What is the question specifically?
The specific question is, seeing that we're merging Guam Housing, which is more of a major function on as a lending institution for people to purchase homes, and that it's been referred over to the Committee on Reorganization, and the subject matter in housing, I would like to ask and yield my time to the chairman of housing on what are his thoughts on this issue of merging a financing institution such as Guam Housing into a GURA versus that of maybe more compatible with GIDA.
Yield? Okay. Senator Long, you're recognized.
Thank you, Senator Shimizu. You know, and actually the more senior members here in this body are probably more astute to legislation that came out way before my time. But if my memory is correct, and I recall back that the same piece of legislation that created GETCA basically was what created the Guam Housing Corporation. Correct me if I'm wrong. Senior Senator's not here, but maybe you, Mr. Speaker, know that. The missions of GETCA and the missions of Guam Housing Corporation are similar in nature in the sense that GETCA has properties, they rent them out, they sell them, they have portfolios. Guam Housing Corporation has the same thing. And in general, in a nutshell, Guam Housing Corporation is a bank. They have different missions in their existence. They don't want inventory. I mean, when a bank takes your house, they don't want it. They want to get rid of it right away because it's a liability to them. They want their money. They have lenders that they need to pay. They don't want property. Totally different missions. Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority is public housing, public assistance. Section 8. Again, where my concerns come in is the fact that when we intertwine the possible missions, and again what Housing and Urban Development had said to me is that you cannot commingle the missions. You can't. We are this. You cannot even think of Guam Housing because you are not Guam Housing. You cannot even think of their mission because totally different missions. They even think of that. We're going to risk rural developments from having, again, the erection of, say, senior citizen centers, fire stations, youth centers that are sprouting up pretty much all over the island in communities that qualify for that. That is not the mission of Guam Housing Corporation. The question from the good Senator, Chairman Zimizu, in regards to the merger, again, the mission of Guam Housing Corporation is more similar in nature to Guam Economic and Development something authority now. It's GETCA rather than just, yeah. So he's right in that sense. And for those who are more versed, again, in the creation of GETCA, the same legislation pretty much created Guam Housing Corporation. So in that the missions are more alike. They're more compatible in nature to be merged, those two entities, because they have very, very similar missions, as opposed to Guam Housing and Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority that have totally different missions, totally different existence in missions of their boards. So to answer your question, you're in my view, the missions are totally different, but GETCA and Guam Housing have very similar missions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, that's having to yield to the oversight chair brings much more knowledge to this bill. You mentioned earlier that we might have to be very cautious as to how this reorganization, notwithstanding the fact that we're not looking at cost savings from the short term, but maybe long-term cost savings, and probably more in terms of cabinet level positions. I guess my question would be, do we have anything in writing or any communication regarding the federal side of the funding for this new agency? Were there any support for this reorganization from the federal housing officials for this reorganization? Was there any contact, even at a staff level, to see if there will be any problems once we enact this, so that we may have to come back and... So my question is, do we have any testimony relative to this reorganization by anyone within the federal side of government to this reorganization? Is there any testimony?
Who are you asking?
The author of the,
Okay.
through the speaker.
Do you yield to the question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I yield to the question. And my understanding is HUD and as well as the Federal Home Loan Bank have verbally discussed their positions with their respective agencies. No written documents were ever transmitted. There were no objections raised from my conversations with leadership at Guam Housing Corporation or GURA. And since this is a follow-up to a previous question on do we need permission from the federal government to tell Guam what to do? And the basic tenets of the United States Constitution, there's a distinct separation between federal powers and state powers, and to some extent we serve as a state agency. And as much as possible, Uncle Sam stays out of those insular and state matters, and this, I believe, is one of them. And on rare occasions, perhaps they transmit communications, but having served as a federal employee for well over 22 years, it is very difficult, from my experience, to get any written commitments or approvals from federal agencies, and I think others who have dealt with these agencies are quite aware of that. If in their side conversations between our officials and their leadership, concerns are raised, those are going to be concerns that will be brought to us, but none of those concerns were raised. And since Senator Jesse has raised the question of commingling, the strongest concern that any of these federal agencies, whether they're grantors or what have you, is a concern for commingling of funds. And if we look carefully at the structure of this bill, we have safeguards in place to prevent commingling of funds. So I'm very confident that those concerns are minimal to concerns that should not be a problem for us. So I thank you for the question.
Mr. Speaker, just a point of information. Point to clarify. My statement never said, do we need to get permission? I'm saying, was there any input into this bill regardless? So, no, I understand the Constitution of the United States. I understand the sovereignty, so maybe my good author of the bill didn't understand my point and maybe took it out of context. And the reason why I raised those questions, because although he said on the sidebar discussions, with the Guam Housing, those issues are actually being raised by the director, the president of Guam Housing himself, Mr. Joe Guevara. And I'm echoing it right here. So it's in the committee report. And again, in so many words, he's saying that under the Department of Housing, the Guam Housing Corporation, GURA, maintain their distinct identities. They maintain their distinct identities. This merges it out, removes those identities into the Guam Housing now. So he raised that issue. Their distinct identities because of their different mandates and ongoing programs. A, U.S. federal funding to GURA not to be commingled of federal funds with the local government operation. He's raising these flags early on. Guam Housing Corporation's relationship, loan, pledges, assets with the Federal Home Loan Bank Board, which only recently discussed taking away servicing function. 2, how is this reorganization may impact ongoing litigation settlement efforts with MIADA regarding the Lada Estate project. And these are coming from the president of the Housing Corporation. You also mentioned, and that's why my amendment to remove the government of Guam employees, not that I don't want him in there, lotizao na fan mahonyo na ini para boto niya. Removing them from harm's way is the best thing that we can do. Because we all know, and that came, again from the testimony, the board must be free of political influence in overseeing the operations of the organization. I think the good author took care of that by removing the voting of the executive secretary, the director, and I've served in the government of Guam for many, many years, and I do understand on a lot of these corporations or this non-stock, non-profit, public corporation, the director or the president or whatever you want to call them, Mr., always serve in an ex-officio function and does not have the carry of the board. I raise these issues because I think I have probably more questions as it relates to what are we doing here. You know, there's an old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I have not heard a major problem. In fact, I heard the good author say, you know what? Guam Housing is doing a fantastic job in cost containment. Guam Housing is doing well in terms of its portfolio, but there are major issues in terms of merging this through. And I raised those flags, and I wanted, like I said, to get the wisdom of my good chair of the housing aspects. And if it is in order, it might be prudent on our part to pass on file and refer it as a joint referral so that the good chair of the housing side will be able to also bring another perspective as it relates to the issues of Guam Housing as a financial institution and that of GIDA. Now he's pouting, but I learned a lot from the brief moments that he had there, and I'm just making those pronouncements, and I'm making some caution, you know. What was that? Oh, okay. Thank you, Senator Wampat. They asked if I can just read this. This is comes from one of the testimony, and it says here, we are pleased to report that GURA has received preliminary clearance for this consolidation from its HUD supervisory authority in Hawaii. And this is something that is documented. And on the next sentence, the approval is contingent upon strict requirements for segregation of GURA federal funds from those of the Guam Housing Corporation. For this reason, you know, they need to, it says, post-consolidation, GHC, which is Guam Housing, survives in its current corporate form, but as a wholly owned subsidiary of GURA. So there is that, again, was brought out. And I'm not trying to kill the bill, Mr. Speaker, believe me. And while some of the answers I may be gaining, that was the way it was written before and then. But this is, I'm not beholding to pass legislation. One of the legislation that we had on the 27th says no government of Guam employee, yet it's in here. Also, I understand that I think we have to have a woman as a member of this board, and I think maybe it might suffice that it may not need to be put in, but they're obligated under earlier legislation. So I have to just do hold some reservation on this, and maybe some sidebar enlightenment from my good chair and also the author of this bill will help me to make sure that when we do vote for this, it doesn't come back and hunt us. Now, we don't have to get any approval from anybody in terms of legislation, but you know, in the 20 years that I've been in government, I've also seen that we have to come back and take corrective measures because we may have not thoroughly get the information to the body. And thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
How many other senators wish to speak on this motion? Senator Pangilinan, you're recognized.
So just want to say, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've been reading the versions of the bill that have been included in the committee report, and I think we are on the third version of the bill, which, of course, leads one to believe that it's undergone continued refinement, and we can see some of that as being obvious in the bill, and maybe construction-wise or grammar-wise and so forth. We've seen the evolution in the bill, but when I look at it from a policy as well as a implementation, of the bill and the transition, I haven't seen that evolution. It still remains the same and true to its original intent. You know, when we talk about reorganization, usually I kind of akin it to you have to dismantle something in order to reorganize it. You have to take it apart, take a look at all the components of the entire piece, and see where those pieces fit in the other areas that you are trying to reorganize. And that's really how you can tell and how you can determine what fits where and what change is going to be affected by the dismantling of the pieces and building a new piece somewhere else. The way I look at the bill, it does nothing of that sort. It doesn't dismantle anything. As a matter of fact, it just puts it under a bigger umbrella. Everything remains the same, all the powers, all the rights, all the privileges, all the employees, all the directors, the deputy directors, the private secretaries, all of those remain, except now we move them under this Department of Housing for Guam Housing Corporation. Then we take GURA, and it's the same. None of the functions of GURA were dismantled to see where else they could fit better in other parts of our government so that you can make a better fit. Everything's intact. As a matter of fact, it's very explicit in the law. This reorganization shall keep everything intact. Then what are we reorganizing? All we're doing is saying we're now going to have a super director, because the way I read this, if everything remains the same, so you still have a director and a deputy director at GURA, you still have a director and a deputy director at Guam Housing Corporation, you still have all the administrators, you don't consolidate anything in terms of the function, it's just taking the two entities and building a bigger umbrella called the Department of Housing and then putting another management tier level on top. So I don't understand this terming this thing as reorganization. It's just consolidation. And consolidation that did not examine functions. Only to the extent that housing, they both got it in their title, let's put them under one house. And that's really all I see. From what I've looked at, I don't see that. I don't see that we consolidated the administration. Or I don't see that we've consolidated loan packaging into one administrator, one of the division or department of the service. No, they all remain separate and so forth. As a matter of fact, if you take a look at the testimony, it envisions that. One of the testimonies says that the loan packager at Guam Housing and the lending program at GURA are now going to charge each other for the service. That's how they see it. They're saying the home lending programs at GURA will be charged a fee for service by Guam Housing, and the loan lending at Guam Housing will be charged a fee for service by GURA. So instead of reducing costs, we're now going to have these two government entities under the same umbrella charging each other for services. How does that reduce the price to the consumer of those services? When he was at Guam Housing, he didn't have to pay a fee. Now he has to pay a fee that is going to be charged by GURA if they cross land or whatever. I don't even see what lending program is at GURA. I don't believe they do have any lending programs. They have grants. They have grants for upgrade of senior citizens, grants for hardening, grants for low income. But I wasn't aware that there's any kind of lending program, yet the testimony says that we've examined these two entities, and the lending program here and the lending program here, we're now going to charge each other for the services we provide. I don't understand how that is reorganization. We're going to keep them separate, and we're going to charge each other. So when I look at that and I examine what has transitioned from the bill, then I don't know that it truly is reorganized. It's consolidation. Absolutely, it's definitely consolidation, you know. And so those are some of my concerns. I think one of the big justifications for consolidation is that they're going to come under one building, that they're going to get a headquarters building built. Now, this headquarters building built was the plan of Gura. At one time, Gura said they were going to build a building to house their facilities because they've outgrown Sinahanya, and that they were going to build it on Chamorro Land Trust property right over here by the Hulali Shopping Center. Well, if they proceeded with that and so forth, we now find that the federal funding is not going to be available for that, for the specific purpose that they have to have an interest in the real estate. The underlying real estate in Chamorro Land Trust cannot alienate that. So now that's not going to work. So now we're not going to have under one single house, maybe one single lease. That's a possibility, and that would, something. But the fact that these are the kind of things that justify in the overall concept and vision of this whole thing as consolidating them and needing to do this. And I guess I don't share that same vision given what has been presented to this. I don't see that, and I'll repeat myself once more, that we're going to now have single division heads. And I'm a little puzzled by the term subsidiary versus a division. What is the term of art here with regards to Guam Housing is going to be a subsidiary wholly owned by Gura? I don't understand why they don't say it's a division of Gura or Guam Housing Corporation or Department of Housing. Where's the ownership of that? Because when I look at all the rights and privileges that exist and transfer under by Guam Housing over there, there is ownership of the portfolio and so forth by the government of Guam. Now we have it going to the Housing Corporation that is appointed by by the governor with the commissioners, and it now becomes a wholly owned subsidiary. What does that mean in terms of legal ramifications of using that term of being a wholly owned subsidiary? I don't understand it. I didn't see it addressed in the bill, and I'm a little hesitant to just accept that as it's okay, because I don't understand the legal implications and the decision to use the word subsidiary, wholly owned at that, versus a division. And I'm sure that these concerns are being looked at and so forth. The fact that we say the federal government is not going to commit to a position one way or the other on these proposed legislation is just not true. When we worked on developing the Department of Integrated Services for Individuals with Disability, we actually took a look at the different programs from the different departments and agencies. And we dismantled them, and then we integrated them into this Department of Integrated Services with Individuals for Disability. And we received communication from the different departments and agencies of the federal government that operated those programs and granted and gave the grants and required the reports and so forth. And we actually received a position from these federal agencies saying, this will work, it'll fall within our criteria of the federal grants, and it will make sure, it will not harm or place the grants at jeopardy to the government of Guam. That your creation of this, as a matter of fact, one of the feedback we got was you have to have a division of compliance. If you don't have a division of compliance for the different programs that are being integrated into this one single entity, then it's not going to meet the requirements of our grant, and therefore you're not going to be eligible for their grant. And therefore, we actually have 3 divisions within the Department of Integrated Persons with Disability. We have the AHRD division, Department of Compliance, and of course the General Administration provision sector of the program. So there were in fact concrete feedback from these department and agencies on how it affects the grants and how the new structure integrates those grants into reporting requirements, compliance issues, et cetera, and I'm sure that if pressed, we might be able to get something on this issue. The other thing is that there's a letter here from that was just given to me, and it's relative to one of the good senators, the chairman of the Committee on Housing, actually asked whether had expressed to GURA any concerns about the possible impact of local consolidation or reorganization and provision of federally funded housing community development service. Our office has not provided GURA with any comments on the proposed consolidation on HUD-funded programs administered. We did suggest to GURA that it contact the executive director of the former Housing and Community Development Corporation of Hawaii. In 1998, the Hawaii Housing Authority and the Housing Finance and Development Corporation were consolidated to form HCDCH. In July of 2006, the legislation approved by Governor Linda Lingo, HCDCH was separated into the Hawaii Public Housing Authority, in GURA in this respect as one of its core functions, and the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation. The Guam Housing Corporation with its loan portfolio, Guam Rental Corporation as part of its cash flow mechanism to generate income to feed the loan portfolio programs, and so forth. You or GURA may want to contact the executive director of the respective for their opinion on the pros and cons on the consolidation or separation of the housing agencies. And I don't see anything reflected in the committee report that indicated that that was done or even attempted to be done in order to just get their experience. You know, we always hear we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Well, the wheel we're trying to invent here was already invented in Hawaii. And then for whatever reason, they found that the wheel did not work. Or at least from this, maybe our circumstances are in fact inherently different from these departments and agencies of Hawaii. Maybe the core missions may have the same title, but the functions are different. We don't know that because the committee report and the committee did not reflect that it attempted to get those kind of feedback. But I think it's very important that we do, because if in fact the wheel we're trying to create is a wheel that was created in Hawaii, they found out it was wobble, you know, or flat, and that it just kept going back and forth instead of forward, and it just take too much energy. You know, when you have a wheel that's not aligned, it takes too much energy to move it, much more than if it was fully aligned and perfectly aligned and with the right tire pressure. But if it's wobble, you kind of wear it out, and then you find out that it doesn't work, and you don't head in the direction that you want because the wheel's wobbled and is not aligned. And we want to find that out. Is that what happened with the Hawaii experiment? And is that what we're going to replicate here? I think it really behooves us as policymakers to try and find that information, provide it to the body so that we can make the best decision that we can. And I know that they're saying, let's do it now and we can fix it later. In some instances, I'm all for that kind of, let's go get them. But when you have something glaring at you that says, but we tried that and we decided to go the other way, then I think just a short step back to find out why may be in the best interest of Guam, in the best interest of the committee, in the best interest of the employees, and in the best interest of reorganization the right way. Thank you, and Mr. Speaker. And I do have one amendment that I'd like to propose. It's been handed out, and it was just a further clarification, I understand, and I'm presenting it under my name, but on behalf of my good colleague. It would be to add the following to 5103D on page 3 as follows. Commissioners should not be employees of the government of Guam. And that's been handed out to yourself as well as the
On
clerk.
the amendment? Without objection, the amendment carries. Any further speakers?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
You're welcome. Any further speakers on the main motion? Okay, is there any objection to placing the bill in third reading? No objection. Motion carries. We're going to take a recess till 1 o'clock tomorrow in the afternoon.